Hey folks, welcome to Pits To Podium. And this week it's time for the Formula One Pirelli Grand Premio della Toscana Ferrari 1000 2020. What's the name, you ask? Everything. Welcome folks to Pits To Podium for the 2020 Tuscan Grand Prix preview. It's the first Tuscan Grand Prix in history, and it also marks the 1000th Grand Prix in the history of Ferrari. To discuss what could be the multiple opportunities and challenges and threats for all the teams in this weekend, I've got Kunal Shah here with me as always. And Kunal, what a weekend this promises to be. Mugello, stunning circuit, and Mercedes could perhaps be back at their best, but the battle in the midfield is something that really excites me quite a bit, along with the fact that, of course, Ferrari celebrates a historic landmark.
They do, but I actually missed the official name of the race. Are you able to repeat it for me?
Sure. The Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio della Toscana Ferrari 1000 2020. When you go back to your friends 20 years down the line and say, hey, which was the favorite race you watched? It was the Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio della Toscana Ferrari 1000 2020. Yeah, it's that sort of a name.
I have to ask: have you memorized it or have you written it down? Because it's pretty crucial.
You've caught me right there. I had to write it down. It's as tough to memorize as my A-level notes, but hey, that's what it is in the end.
When it comes to Formula One and when it comes to Ferrari, especially the two of them, it's not always as straightforward or simple. It has to go all around and finally reach a point where we all know they would have reached. But I'm glad we're calling it the Tuscan Grand Prix. I'm glad we're calling it the race at Mugello.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting start to the weekend already. Big news coming in. Sebastian Vettel moving to Aston Martin Formula One team in 2021. I loved the fact that they made this announcement at Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix. As somebody who loves marketing and everything that goes with it, this is perfect guerrilla marketing example that one could get.
He's just put one up on Ferrari. Coming into this weekend, all the way through Wednesday, because I think by Monday, Tuesday, everyone was still recovering from the tremor of Pierre Gasly's win. But then Wednesday, everyone was thinking, oh, you know what, Ferrari 1000 Grand Prix, this is going to be huge. Thursday morning, Vettel announces he's leaving, and suddenly nobody cares about the fact that it's Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix. That's how you do it, Sebastian. That's the way to go up ahead.
And I'm actually wondering if, Ferrari are pretty glad that Sebastian has stolen their thunder and limelight, given their dismal performances this season and what could be, at their 1000th Grand Prix. I mean, it's probably good that Vettel sort of, been like, hey, bye guys, I'm going to Aston Martin, and Ferrari would be like, thanks so much for, saving us that much extra attention that comes for this special weekend.
Exactly. And just when you think your future is going to be a bit rough, think about what it must feel like to be Carlos Sainz at this stage. We'll speak about that and the whole thing in depth much later on. But Kunal, the first thing we have to get down into is the track, because for lots of casual Formula One fans, and I know quite a few of you are watching, it's totally fine. I mean, we agree that Formula One is the biggest and the most significant racing series in the world. They may not be very aware of Mugello because, of course, this circuit has never in history hosted a Formula One Grand Prix. But in fact, it's only an hour and 40 minutes away from Maranello. It's very close in the hearts of all the Tifosi. But primarily, it's been a circuit that has been synonymous with MotoGP over the years, and more so with sports car racing as well, with Ferrari hosting their Corsa Clienti programs and lots of GT3 and GT4 races happening over here. So for the average Joe, for the average Formula One fan who doesn't know much about the circuit, what is it all about? What are the main challenges that one can expect at Mugello?
Well, the first thing is it's a Ferrari-owned circuit. So Ferrari are owners of the circuit. I'm pretty sure they are promoting the race as well, given it's a 1000th Grand Prix, and they are participating. So I guess this is probably the first time in history that there is one single team playing three such strong roles when it comes to the organization and management and participation in the race. But coming to the circuit in itself, there are lots of memorable quotes out there, especially ones, from, say, Mark Webber, who said, I think 10 laps around Mugello is definitely better than 1,000 laps around Abu Dhabi or something like that. Yeah. And, from what we all know via all the other, categories that go racing, it's, like you and I discussed, it's 14 corners. 5.4 kilometers long. There's a almost 1.2 kilometer long straight, which is the only DRS zone. But most importantly, there are 2 points to keep in mind here. So the circuit is otherwise made up of medium to high speed corners. Okay. And in terms of referencing for the F1 teams, it's very similar to what you would expect in terms of a setup that you would follow for, say, a Silverstone.
Absolutely. It's a jaw-dropping circuit. I mean, if you haven't driven it on the sim or any PC game yet, go get a Assetto Corsa right away. I mean, you can just drive on Mugello as much as you want, and it's a lovely circuit. You've got so many superb corners, fast speed, slow speed corners as well. Just the flow of the track is something amazing. But sadly, Formula One isn't exactly all about the flow, because had it been that way, we would have been going to a lot more classic continental European or maybe American circuits. But the racing is also one thing that we must keep in mind. Now, there are quite a few fantastic circuits to drive on that don't really produce the best of races. Is Mugello going to be a bit of the same? Is the main question on offer. And sadly, from the looks of things, it may just be that way.
Yes, it seems like that's what people are predicting for it to be. It may just be that way. There's a narrow line through pretty much all the corners that go. Although the only hope that people have is that the 1.2 kilometer long DRS enabled straight might actually just offer chance for overtaking into turn one. But that's pretty much the only overtaking spot that
Yeah.
people are talking about. But the other thing, Soumil, which is probably the second thing that people should look forward to for the upcoming Grand Prix are the Pirelli tires. So
Yeah.
understandably, Pirelli have brought the hardest compound tires, that they have to the race. Okay, these are also the compound of tires that were used in the first race at Silverstone when Lewis Hamilton finished, on three wheels, as we all remember. So it is expected that tire management will be key. The tire pressures will be as high. The circuit temperatures will be, expectedly be higher as well. So it waits to be seen how tire degradation is going to impact proceedings on Sunday.
Yeah, 31 degrees Celsius is the forecasted temperature in Mugello for Sunday. So who knows? Perhaps the heat can come into perspective and we may see more things like blisters. But it is definitely going to be a circuit where you can see the death of front left tires because this track, there are no straights. I mean, when you're done with the corner, slap, bang, all the way to the next one, bang, the next, and then the next, and then the next. You just keep on going from one corner to the other, then to the other, then to the other. So your tires barely have any time to cool down, barely have any mercy. And even traffic could become a bit of a problem because it may not be the most narrow circuit in the world, but still, in certain places it can get really tight. So this should be one thing to watch out for. But Kunal, before we go to the next topic of discussing more about Ferrari, how do teams map something like this up? I mean, when we come into Mugello, I mean, this circuit wasn't announced 6 to 8 months ago. So teams haven't really had the time to send their people in, analyze the bumps, analyze the crests and everything, know where the track is, and just figure out the more important points. So how do you prepare for a circuit like this one on such a short notice, especially because you haven't really been here ever in your entire history?
Yeah, so that's a good question you asked, and I co-wrote an article a couple of days ago with a former Formula One engineer. Okay, and the question that we sort of addressed is Mugello really a new circuit or an old circuit or a returning circuit, as we call it, for most of the Formula One teams? And the answer somewhere lies in the middle. It is sort of a returning circuit because, like mentioned before, Formula One teams have tested here. Before I think it was 2012, and like we were laughing, that Romain Grosjean was quickest at that time. So teams would have had data from the past that they would have, used excessively in simulation to make sure that when they arrive and when they sort of drive their first laps in free practice, they already have a very strong baseline setup for the car. And when I say baseline setup, it would mean from the powertrain perspective, from the suspension perspective, from the aerodynamics perspective, and so on.
Absolutely. That should be one thing to watch out for. And when we say always back up your data, it always comes in handy. Because who knew 8 years down the line, Formula One would actually come to Mugello? Yeah, different cars, different drivers, perhaps different people working on the team as well. But when you just go back on your hard drive and figure out, oh, hey, this data still exists, can be a major advantage in this case, can't it?
Yes, but I'm actually looking forward to the Arabiata 1 and
Oh,
Arabiata 2. Up until
beautiful
now,
corners.
we've all loved the Arabiata, or at least I have loved the Arabiata as in my pasta. Okay, and suddenly there's a new reason altogether to love the Arabiata. Word. In our lives, it's known to be really quick corners, and
Yeah.
pretty much all the drivers have been reading all the pre-race press releases, and 80% of the press releases mention that drivers are looking forward to taking these corners pretty much flat out.
I mean, I don't blame them. Mugello would never have seen cars as fast in its history, so expect a lot of track records to be shattered and some really fun onboards. That's going to be the whole case. And hey, plus point, there's no runoff and all that other nonsense. It is a classic old school sports car circuit. You go wide into the gravel or in the grass. End of story. That's what I love. Then we can also move on to the talk of the town for this week and Ferrari. So we've been speaking about this for quite a while off late about why all the home races that Ferrari have this season could end up being dismal. Now they were saved from the shame at Monza because they had a double retirement. Of course, had they been on the track, they would have been lapped, devoured by the others. I mean, who knew? And that was if the race was appropriate, because had it not been for Charles Leclerc's crash, we wouldn't have seen the red flag and so on and so forth. Lots of variables to consider. But at Mugello, Kunal, things seem to be as dark as the new livery for this weekend. It seems.
Yes, one doesn't know what the form factor is going to be. But it's easy to sort of say that Ferrari will struggle given their circuit characteristics. But I think the 1,000th Grand Prix will eventually be remembered for all the emotion and the legacy that represents Ferrari. Okay,
Yeah,
as much as we've all been making fun of them for all these years for not being able to win more races and championships than they actually have, given their whole setup and given how much they invest in the team and so on. I think, as Formula One fans, we need to sort of step back and
yeah,
separate the performance from the history for once at least, and appreciate that there is this one team that's been a part of pretty much every Formula One Grand Prix that's ever been raced upon, in these 70 years of the sport, and in fact, even pre-World War era of
exactly.
racing as well.
That was a brilliant time. I certainly wasn't alive, neither were any of us. But if you just get to read about those races, superb stuff. Amazing times about how Enzo Ferrari just constructed this team from the very ashes. I mean, just from being a regular driver for yet another mechanical outfit, the way he transformed this into Scuderia Ferrari, then the partnership with Alfa Romeo, and then restructuring the team himself. Amazing story. You have to go and read about that. But yeah, it's a bit of a sad place to celebrate 1,000 GP as well, because normally Ferrari are known to be the engine team who believe a lot in the engine. Power unit has been dismal this year. So has been the chassis, so it could end up being a very tricky race for them, just to put it that way. Not exactly the most memorable of milestones, let's call it that way. But hey, Ferrari aside, there are lots of other teams that we must keep our eyes on as well. And the next thing, Kunal, that we have to come down to, and this is going to be the fun one, Mercedes, they're not going to be showing any respite at all. Yes, the only place when they showed a little bit of respite was when they painted the safety cars red to honor Ferrari.
Yes.
But on the track, nothing of that sort is going to be shown. Hamilton will be as as ruthless as ever.
Yes, he will. And, had it not been for the weird race that we had last weekend in Monza, Hamilton could have been gunning for his
Yeah,
91st win at, Ferrari's 1,000th Grand Prix. So would have been a bittersweet moment twice as over because, of the Vettel announcement as well. But that actually reminds me, I owe a clarification to all our viewers and listeners. I sort of called Pierre Gasly's strategy a little wrong, in last weekend's video. So just pardon me for that. But coming back to this, Mercedes would be desperate to try and prove a point here because of their obvious rivalry that's there. That the fact is that they would be like, hey, we scored a 1-2 at Ferrari's 1,000th race.
yeah,
And the embarrassment would be a little bit higher if Ferraris failed to score points, because let's remember, it's been 2 races when Ferrari have actually
yeah.
not scored points. So at Spa, they were off the pace, and they didn't score points. And then, like you said, there was a double retirement at at Monza, and if Mercedes do get a 1-2, okay, I think there will be a formation finish or a formation lap that will be there, just to honor their rivalry with Ferrari after the race.
Stick it in, you Italian folks. That's what they'll be saying in. But yeah, it's going to be amazing. What would be even saltier is seeing Ferrari lapped. But let's hope that that sort of thing never happens. I mean, it depends on what side of the grand scheme of things are you on. But that is genuinely a real possibility. But very briefly, Kunal, when we always speak about Mercedes, we speak about their dominance. We speak about how they are not the favorites, as Toto would like to call them. But on the whole, the main thing to look out for in Mercedes in this case has to be that battle between Valtteri Bottas and Lewis Hamilton. Are we still seeing a battle of sorts? Because Bottas just is fading off. He had the biggest opportunity to get something for himself last week and just sadly slipped away from his hands.
It did, and I mean, honestly, till it's mathematically not over, it's not
Yeah,
done
yeah,
yet. So Valtteri will hope for the best, and all you need is one stroke of luck. In his case, Lewis entering the pit lane when it was closed last weekend was that one stroke of luck, but he, of course, couldn't capitalize on it, and so on. But I think he's definitely going to just make sure that he gets a good start. He doesn't need a great start always. He needs a good start.
yeah.
He needs to make sure that his opening lap is decent enough. And then, like he's been doing, so he needs to make sure that he's as close to Lewis Hamilton in qualifying as he can be. If he's, able to get ahead, then nothing like it. And I think just in the build up to this Grand Prix weekend, he, acknowledged that he probably needs to find more gains to try and outpace Lewis Hamilton. So
Yeah.
again, a fantastic battle up front. We only see Valtteri on the losing side, but he's not been losing by more than a couple. He's not even losing by a couple of tenths. It's a couple of hundreds. That's that's the difference between the two drivers. So Mercedes drivers are definitely evenly matched.
Exactly. But when it comes to the race, I think it's just that first lap where Bottas has been a tad bit apprehensive in this season. And if that sort of thing can go away, again, very easy to say, very hard to do in real life. I think that has been the missing X factor of sorts, you can call it, the only chink in his armor this season. And yeah, let's see if Bottas can take the fight to Lewis Hamilton later on
I,
in
I
Mugello.
just I just feel that maybe Bottas knows that he needs to make just so much of the start and the
Yeah,
opening lap
yeah,
that it's psychologically probably working reverse for him. Okay, so I'm sure he's a world class athlete
yeah.
himself. He's a multiple times Grand Prix winner, Mercedes driver. I'm sure he'll figure a way to sort himself out, but he knows that he needs to get it right more often than not now.
Exactly. The stakes are getting ever so higher for Valtteri Bottas, and this is where it comes down to the actual fun. This is where the business end of the championship begins. And for Bottas, the levels have just been elevated a level up. So let's see how that goes out in the end as well. And just because you mentioned the word reverse Kunal, I'm going to add in a very slight point. Please do not discuss reverse grids for Formula One, folks. It's a bad idea. We shall discuss that later on. We actually have discussed that. Click on the top right corner to check the video about our potential experiments that we had in mind for 2020. But please do not do that. Just not for Formula One. GT3s, it's all right. GT4s, Formula 2, Formula 3, anything is fine. Not Formula One. Okay, now that mini rant is kind of done. Let's move down a bit lower down the grid because we touched upon this briefly early on about Sebastian Vettel doing a bit of gamesmanship with his old team Ferrari. But the new team that he's joined, Racing Point, soon to be Aston Martin this year, I think they could have a bit of an edge this time out.
Yes, they've had a fairly good aero design package. It's been fairly well balanced, and we all know why that's the case. Okay, so I think they will come out, probably leading the midfield. They will be buoyed by Lance Stroll's podium from last weekend as well. I expect McLaren to be doing better as well
Yeah,
because such kind of circuits sort of suit them, and they've sort of found a car now which does well at most kind of circuits, so that's always heartening to see. And then there's Renault, and I sort of think Renault won't be as good as they were in,
yeah.
say, Spa and Monza. This circuit, they might just end up struggling a wee bit.
Exactly. And even though it's got a 1.2 kilometer straight down in the very middle, I think it's still going to be a bit tricky because all those quick rapid fire corners that you have, They need that extra bit of downforce that Renault sadly do seem to be lacking. But Kunal, Pierre Gasly, nothing. He's been the standout driver of the midfield. What does he have in store this week? I mean, he's become the latest Grand Prix winner in the history of Formula One, so that's a big plus. But are we going to see Alpha Tauri back near the top of the midfield again, or realistically, they will be somewhere fighting along with the likes of Renault and Ferrari this time out?
I have a feeling it's going to be, fighting the likes of Renault and Ferrari and so on, but trust Gasly to use this momentum. And I'm sure everyone who's been listening to pretty much every episode think that, oh
Yeah,
God, that's the one word Kunal keeps referring to. But guys, it is very important in sport. It's very important in life. And you probably experience it in your life as well, that when there is positive forward momentum,
yeah,
things just sort of come to you far easier than they would. And that's probably the phase that Pierre Gasly is in. And I'm pretty excited to see how he sort of uses this momentum at Mugello. And talking of Gasly, everyone's of course saying that how quick or how soon before he sort of gets to get called into Red Bull Racing.
yeah.
I have a feeling they'll probably see this season out, and then decide for 2021 what to do with their drivers. But for now, probably just letting Gasly enjoy the lesser pressure at Alpha Tauri will benefit his career and his confidence a little more than suddenly doing a mid-season switch and putting him back in a high-pressure Max Verstappen favored environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. For Pierre Gasly, it's been a run of good results so far. I mean, ever since the season has begun, he's been on fire. But the reason why you get a good seed is not a couple of performances here and there. You have to solidify that. You have to keep on getting good results. And I think for Red Bull, the logical thing would be to see out the end of the season, see how you can recover from a very good high. Because often what happens is when you win a big result, you often need to slack off initially. So that'll be a big character test for Pierre Gasly as well to see, does he have that same determination as he had before he won the Grand Prix as well. So yeah, lots of interesting things coming up in store. But his sister team, AlphaTauri's sister team, Red Bull, could very well be in the fight for a very high position because normally, Kunal, Red Bull are a team that have a chassis designed for high downforce circuits. Case in point, Mexico City, Monaco. These are circuits where Red Bull excel. Now, Mugello may not have the same necessity for high downforce as those tracks, but it still ranks fairly high up in the list, doesn't it?
Yes, Mugello, like we said earlier, needs a fairly well balanced aero setup, which Red Bull are pretty good at. We've also seen their car has been a little tricky to handle
Yeah.
sometimes, but I do expect them to sort of be easily fitting into the slot for the second best team. I think that's definitely coming Red Bull's way. Okay. But the hope always is that Max Verstappen is able to break into the Mercedes positions of one
Yeah.
and two pretty much every weekend that we speak. It's like how we expect George Russell to deliver a magical lap in Q1 and suddenly find himself in Q2 pretty much
Exactly.
every Saturday of the race.
Exactly. Oh, actually, that's the last thing that we can touch upon. Williams, what's in store for them? First Grand Prix. Now, officially, I made this at a last time out. I'm not going to do it again. First Grand Prix under new ownership. Finally, Dorilton Capital is well and truly the people managing the team. Claire Williams and the family have stepped back. So it's a turn of the page for Williams. It's the start of a brand new chapter. And at last, after a difficult couple of rounds at the likes of Spa and Monza, this could be one circuit where they finally get to explore their car a bit more because, of course, high downforce, that's something that suits Williams, I beg your pardon, a little bit more than the likes of Monza and Spa.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Williams are definitely trying to maximize their package at pretty much all types of circuits, and trust George Russell to make the most of every opportunity that sort of comes his way. So I would love to see what he's able to pull off in Q1. Like you said, there are new owners, new energy, new buzz, new vibrations around the team. So let's see how that sort of drives them up, this weekend. But at the end of the day, I expect them to still be, fighting for last position or trying to get out of the last position. And the other team that may just find themselves there is Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's a fun fact. So Kimi Raikkonen's first ever Formula One test, the most
Yeah.
infamous test as we call it, because, he had barely done 23 races. He was given a super license, or, provisional super license and so on. And that first ever test was at Mugello
Hmm.
20 years ago. So great
Interesting.
history for Kimi Raikkonen to sort of come back to as well. And honestly, really hoping he doesn't end up being 20th and last this weekend.
And technically, it's also a home race for Alfa Romeo as well because their headquarters in Turin, not too far off from this circuit as well. So yeah, it's a big weekend for both the Italian teams. Let's see what happens. Mick Schumacher is also going to be right in the heat of the action. He's going to be driving an FP1, but who is he going to drive for, Kunal?
Well, it's not been revealed yet. The only thing they've sort of, after spreading the rumor, the only thing they've revealed is that he'll drive his father's F2004 as a demonstration. So one doesn't know if, the rumor that was spread was around the F2004, or really actually be in a Haas or an Alfa Romeo, or maybe even Ferrari. Who knows?
Yeah, if they go the full Monte and say, hey, we're going to give you the Ferrari instead of Sebastian Vettel, that's going to be spicy. That's going to be some real spicy stuff coming up your way. But in the end, Kunal, just I think because we've got a little bit of time, we can just go down to this one final question. Not related to the Grand Prix, of course, directly, but it's something that has been surrounding the world of Formula One quite a bit of late. Sergio Perez has been axed. I think there's no other way of putting it. I think I'm going to avoid the euphemism. I'm going to avoid all the subtleness and everything. I think he's quite clearly been axed because, of course, which father would take their own son out of the Formula One team? Is this the right call in the long run? Because we know that Sergio Perez is an astute driver, really loves to get his elbows out, far more mature than Lance Stroll. And although Lance Stroll has made major leaps and bounds in terms of his driving, he's no Sergio Perez.
Well, I tweeted about this. Racing Point presumably had four drivers to choose from.
Hmm.
Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, and Sergio Perez. And basis current form and pace. Okay, picking Vettel and Stroll is like
Yeah.
picking the slowest of the possible pairing options they had. Of course, you can debate it with me. There is no right, there's no wrong. I'm just stating an option or an opinion out there. But I think Formula One would be poorer if a driver like Sergio Perez
Hmm.
doesn't end up getting a seat for 2021. And he has a massive fan base in Mexico, another market that Formula One would want to keep in check.
Yeah.
So I somewhat expect him to show up at an Alfa Romeo or maybe even a Haas,
Yeah.
because let's remember, Soumil, that these teams, there are eight cockpits that are still available. Okay. And the likes of Haas and Alfa Romeo, both the seats are sort of unannounced. And my understanding is that both these teams would like to select a driver for 2021
Hmm.
who is also eager to race for them in 2022, because during a regulatory change that comes
Yeah.
about in Formula One every 5-7 years, you don't want to be stuck with a new driver that doesn't help you with the continuity that one needs over
Yeah.
the period of change.
No, absolutely. And even if it was Alfa Romeo, I think I wouldn't mind as a driver because initially for 2021, yeah, you may be having a bit of a tricky year because, of course, the chassis isn't exactly the best in the world. But if there's one team rather who would you can take a bet on, it has to be Sauber. They're just very admirable. I mean, they can deliver in such circumstances. We know they have the prowess. We know they have the financial backing as well. And with the cost cap coming in as well, it all just plays into the hands of a team like Sauber, who's been and done everything for so many years, just not able to taste success quite like all the other teams have. So who knows? That's maybe not a bad place to be in the long run.
Yeah, and Sergio Perez has raced for Sauber before.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so there's always a reunion possible out there. But in all these moving pieces, one doesn't know if Nico Hulkenberg suddenly misses out on a drive even more so, because after his comeback races at Silverstone with Racing Point, everyone
yeah.
was pretty impressed and said, "Wow, look at it! Look at him. He's been out of the sport for so many races, and he comes back and sort of almost matches or even outpaces Lance Stroll, right?" But come to think of it, if Nico Hulkenberg was eyeing that seat at Alfa Romeo as well, Now with Sergio Perez's availability, I think Perez just gets a bit of an
Yeah.
edge over Nico on the fact that he's probably had more podiums, definitely brings in more money, and is perception wise just a far more mature, more dependable driver than say a Nico
Yeah.
has been. But that actually then means that at Alfa Romeo in 2021 we could see two completely new drivers, right? So
Yeah.
it could be a Mick Schumacher partnering a Sergio Perez. Who knows?
Or maybe even a Callum Ilott, or even Guan Yu Zhou. Who knows how things could play out? But that's all in the future, folks. That's all. That's all to come. I think 6 to 8 months down the line. But what is immediately going to happen within the next 48 hours is going to be what I hope for: a very good Formula One Pirelli Grand Premio della Toscana Ferrari 1000 2020. I just had to say it one more time. Excuse me for that. But folks, on the whole, if you've reached so far, I'm pretty sure you've enjoyed this video quite a bit. Do feel free to leave a like, to share this video with your friends and Formula One enthusiasts. I mean, we know you're connected to quite a few of them. And also to subscribe to Pits to Podium, because we've got a lot more interesting content coming up. And don't forget to check out a Circus F1 comic playlist. That one is an absolute delight, isn't it?
It is, Soumil. Fantastic to another, look forward video, a review of the Formula One Pirelli Grand Premio della Toscana Ferrari 1000 2020. I had to do it once. You did it 5 times, and I was under peer pressure to see if I sort of am able to read it as well as you do. But thanks
Yeah.
so much. It was nice to have you on Pits to Podium one more time. And guys, we will see you on Sunday with the post race debrief of the Tuscan Grand Prix.
Absolutely. So until then, folks, goodbye and good night. See you.